Welcome to Attican Plays Rise of Industry. All right, hi and welcome to another Rise of Industry video. This is Attican, and in this episode, we are going to get into the brandy business. When we finished our last episode, we'd built out this beautifully efficient, beautifully profitable, large berry pie industry where we're feeding berry pies into Iberia and Oberon over there to the left of our screen or to the west. And we noticed as we were doing that there was a liquor store in Iberia, our main town, which is demanding 3 brandy every 15 days. And there's a liquor store up in Stroud demanding 2. So we'd planned to go in and attack that 5 demand with a brandy business. But then we've noticed that since then, a liquor store has opened up in Kaywood. This, by the way, is the benefit of how we continue to pump goods into these cities and grow them. So now we're going around making sure there aren't any more. But there's a liquor store in Kaywood that demands 2 liquor every 15 days. So now we've got a total of 7 brandy. I said liquor, sorry. 7 brandy every 15 days total demand. We've checked the other cities and there aren't any more liquor stores hiding on us. So we've got a total demand of 7 brandy. And so we're going to use our planning tool to set it to match. So we're going to have a total demand of 7 every 15 days. We're going to have our product as brandy. And then it takes me a minute to realize I've got 15 in there. But once we do, we'll set our brandy production to match the demand. So that'll be 14 brandy industries rather than 15. So here we go. Finally, I punch in. We put in 14. That tells us it's going to take us over $100 million in investment to build this out. But the profit is just going to be tremendous. And this whole thing will pay for itself in like 8 months. So this is a terrific investment. And we're definitely going to do this one. And the other reason we're going to do it is it's an opportunity for me to show you a large setup where everything doesn't flow nice and tightly. That berry pies is a beautiful example, I think, of how you can do one where you have the supply chain kind of feeding and growing and tight against each other, so that the different pieces, the wheat feeds the flour and the flour feeds the dough and the dough feeds the berry pies and the berries feed the berry pies in a nice tight way, even though you have a large number of industries. In this one, we're going to have kind of a mixture. We're going to have down here where we're looking right now, what we're going to do is actually replace all that stuff we did. Remember all that kind of medium-sized stuff we did to kind of keep us busy while we were waiting on another Tier 3 opportunity? We set up a bunch of industries using our natural resources to go out and do, diodes and ceramics and furniture bases and furniture base L, I think it was, and all that stuff. Well, what I decided to do is just blow all that up. You'll see in a minute. But what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to figure out what is a way to divide up, because we have so many grapes. We need 131 fields of grapes. That's a lot of grapes. And we need a total of over 60 wine factories, 66, I don't know what you're going to call them. You don't really distill wine, you don't brew wine, but we do here. We do in this game, so we're going to distill wine, I guess. So we've got wine factories. We've got 22 wine factories, and we need a whole bunch of grapes to feed that. So what I'm looking for is what's the best way to kind of set those up into little modules that would work efficiently and could stand alone, if you will, and work well, so that we could feed X number of wine industries and have them work, and then we could ship our wine to our brandy factories where we can pump out the brandy. So that's all I'm doing here is working that through that. I'm not going to make you watch all this. This is just true nerd going nuts here. Some of you who are smarter than me can figure this out in your head probably. But what I ended up settling on is a beautiful ratio is to have 3 water siphons full. That's 15 harvesters of water feeding 4 farms full. So that's 20 fields of the crop, grapes. So you've got 15 water feeding 20 grapes, feeding 10 wine factories. So we've got this nice ratio of 3 to 4 to 10 that works beautifully in the case of wine. And so we're going to set up little modules that have 10 wine factories being fed by 4 grape orchards being fed by 3 water siphons. So I won't make you watch the rest of all this nerd stuff where I'm kind of going through how do I divide this up and figure it out. All right, so here we moved ahead just a little bit, and we're looking at that area. Remember, this is the area that we built out earlier to do diodes and ceramics and furniture base L and all that. And now we're just going to literally start blowing things up. We're going to demolish. We actually will get a lot of good money back for this, but we're going to blow up all the wood base, all the oil-based stuff, you know, the ceramics, the diodes, everything that isn't one of those glass and metallurgy, I think they're called, buildings. Basically the ones where you can make steel and glass and bottles and stuff like that. We're going to keep those around because we're going to need a large group of, well, there I go deleting some, of course. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to get everything tightly around that warehouse. So I'm going to kind of redesign this to match the demand of what we're trying to get done. And what we're trying to get done here is to ship coal and sand into that warehouse to feed glass industries. Those glass industries will then feed a set of bottle industries, and then those bottle industries will feed to our brandy factories, and our brandy factories or distilleries will be set up. Well, you'll see how that goes in a little bit. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But what we're doing here is going to repurpose this whole area here and kind of blow up those little areas. We were making money on them. Could we have left them? Absolutely. We could have left them and built another one of these somewhere else. But one thing you have to look at on any of these maps is how many resources do you really have. So there are cases where you have to give up these lower margin businesses in order to be able to support your higher margin ones. So what I'm doing here is setting up, I think I set everything to glass. And I'm really made a couple of mistakes here, but finally got it right. What I really want are the bottles up there. I'd originally thought about doing this design where I was actually going to do it as a tighter design and have it almost more like the berry pie one where everything's down there close. And I really didn't want to go there. I really wanted to have that at least one large component of it separated from everything else. So see, I'm just going to dump all the stuff we don't need, the wood, all the stuff we've accumulated in our warehouse that we just don't need. And we're going to go ahead and clean this thing up, and we're going to again have glass and sand and coal and bottles going through here. So at this point, I'm just trying to build out all the glass and bottle industries we need. And so I'm getting ready to place my first bottle industry, and I realized that I hadn't even researched bottles yet. So I've got to go out and do some quick research. Out of all that research we've done, I haven't done the bottles. So that'll go quickly at $5 million a month to spend. So we'll take a short pause in the building and let that research finish. Then we can build our bottle industries, or our bottle factory, excuse me. We've got everything kind of nice and tight around that one warehouse, so they'll feed each other. Could have, done the more direct feeding and saved some money, but at this point, money is not, I mean, obviously you want to make as much money as you can, but I'm more interested in making sure that this works smoothly and I don't have mistakes, and I don't make mistakes in my routing or whatever. So I'm going to build out the needed bottle industries here, and then you'll see when I rethink how I'm going to do this, You'll see a slight change in this coming up, but for now I'm just trying to get the right number of bottle industries and the right number of glass industries there in a nice tight fit with one another, so they can all work out of that one warehouse. Now at this point I've rethought where I'm going to put the Brandy factories. I was thinking at one time of putting them in a tight, right around this little configuration so that they could use that same warehouse. But I decided, since we're going to be delivering to Kaywood, that we would move the Brandy factories up there to that road you see just up to the north of where we're working. And that way they can, the correct number of factories can make the direct delivery to Kaywood, and that'll be easy there. And that means that we'd like to have the bottle industry closer, because I'm going to have the bottles delivering up to the north there, up to a warehouse where all the Brandy industries can grab the bottles. So that's the reason for switching that all around and making it so that the bottles were kind of more to the north and the glass was more to the south. So here we go. Now we're going to put in our distilleries to actually make the brandy, and we're going to start up there close to Kaywood so that the first so that we can use 4 of them to actually feed directly into Kaywood, and then the rest can well, you'll see what we do with the rest of them, but we'll use 4 of them close to Kaywood, and then there's going to be 14 total. Remember, that's a lot of brandy factories or distilleries. So there's going to be 14 total. We're just going to group them up here along this road and put in a warehouse and have that be the area where we do our final product creation. We put in our warehouse, and now we're thinking about how are we going to get the wine down here to our vodka distilleries, and how are we going to deliver. So we're going to start using trains, and we're going to put trains kind of on either end of this warehouse, one pointing toward Iberia down here to our left, or to our southwest, I guess it would be, as we're looking at it, and one pointing kind of towards Stroud. And we're going to take advantage of the fact that we can terraform huge. Not being able to terraform is a big deal in this game. If you cannot terraform, it can be very irritating. And you notice here, once you have some money, don't be afraid. If you make a mistake, I put that in there and didn't have that terraforming done, so I really kind of would have had my track running right into a hill, and I didn't want that. I could have done a tunnel, I guess, but so I just deleted the train terminal and started over. It costs you a little bit of money because you don't get a full refund on your deletion, but so what? You get it right. Getting it right is more important than saving a few dollars. So now we've got a couple of train terminals, and we've got our basic setup of bottle and glass industry, and we need to have more coal and sand coming into that industry to really make it rock and roll. So now we're going to set up the warehouse to take the bottles. Actually, you know, I changed my mind. I decided to keep this really simple. Remember how I switched all those bottles to the north and the glass to the south? But it turns out I've just decided to just feed everything into the warehouse and let the warehouse take the bottles up to that other warehouse. So all the bottle industries will put their product into the warehouse nearest them down there to the south, and then that warehouse will have an automatic destination to go up and drop those bottles off at the warehouse up to the top. And we could, you know, you could set up trade routes to do this, but the warehouses work just great. And well, anyway, that's what I did. And we could experiment as we go along, get more and more into the details of the game as to, you know, the logistics and where does it make the most sense to use trade routes and where does it not. But right now we're setting up 4 of these distilleries to deliver straight into Kaywood. So those nearest 4, when they create a unit of brandy, they will ship it directly to the liquor store up in Kaywood. The rest we will have split between these 2 train stations, as you'll see in a moment. And we have 7 created, so we're going to make 3 more brandy distilleries, and that will give us a total of 10. And we're going to take these next 6. We've got 4 going to Kaywood. These next 6 are going to have their destination set to this left-hand train station, which will eventually be hooked up to Iberia so that we can deliver directly to Iberia. And we need a total of 3 each 15 days in Iberia, and that equates to 6 a month, and that means we need 6 factories to meet that demand. So the 6 that we just changed, their destination will be the train station. The train station will drop that brandy off in Iberia. It'll get unloaded by the other end, the train station at the other end, and go directly to the liquor store in Iberia, and that way we'll have the proper amount of our total production going to Iberia. So we've got Kaywood taken care of, we've got Iberia, and now we're going to put in 4 more distilleries, and we're going to point those 4 to the train station on the right, which is going to be hooked up to Stroud, and then there'll be a train station in Stroud. We'll have an unload. Its destination will be, of course, the liquor store in Stroud. Now we've got a match for the demand of 2 per 15 days or 4 a month that we have in Stroud. So we've got our 14 distilleries all sending their product off to the 3 potential destinations in the right proportions so that we can hit the demand in all 3 cities once we get this thing running efficiently. Now we're going to set up the train station in Iberia, and I'm not going to show you too much of this because this is the 3rd time I've recorded this little piece of the voiceover because I'm trying my best not to sound like I'm complaining or whatever, but the laying of track in the game, and keep in mind it's an alpha game, and I'm reminding myself of that. It's an alpha game. There's going to be a lot more done to it. We've seen a lot of changes already. They're doing a great job with this game. Have a lot of confidence that the developers are going to get it right. Track laying right now is not right. It is very hard to do. As you can see right there, it's very hard to see what you're laying. The rapid scroll and rapid scroll out, I think that's actually my fault. That's probably limitations of my equipment recording on top of playing the game. So kind of ignore that sudden zoom in, zoom out that was unintended. But look at that. The track laying is just really a challenge, and maybe you aren't aware, but I have laid a fair amount. I have put down a fair amount of track in video games in recent times, and this is not quite right. But I'm not going to say more about it except that it does work. Once you just have the patience to work your way through it, you'll have to correct some things, I think, as you go along, but eventually you'll get it. And I'm sure I'll get better at it as I go along. And I'm also sure it will get better as it goes along, because the developers have shown us a lot in terms of responding to things that aren't quite right and fixing them. I will say this, for those of you playing the game, you've got to connect the track to both those platforms at each of the terminals. There are 2 platforms at each terminal. One of them is the inbound platform. The other one is the outbound. And you've got to have them both connected to your line. There's another example of how the track laying kind of threw me for a loop. But again, I'm just going to shut up about that and just recognize that it will get better. And I'll get better at that zooming someday, and life will be better. But I can tell you it was a very painful process putting the track down, and you'll see eventually we lay quite a bit of track here, and it was more painful than it needed to be. I'll get better. Hopefully the game will get better, and let's just stop it right there. So I'm going to fast forward past some of this pain because I don't want to really relive it. It's too painful to watch. And we'll move forward to the point where we start to build out our grapes. Because now at this point, we've kind of done this backwards. We've got our glass and bottles, so we can get bottles to the brandy. We've got our brandy. We're now setting up our delivery of the final product, the brandy, to the 3 cities that it needs. But we don't have any wine, and we don't have any grapes for the wine, and we don't have any water for the grapes. So obviously that needs to happen, and we'll take care of that next. And let's just fast forward through some of this. Now we're ready to start building out our water, grapes, and wine distilleries, or whatever we're going to call them. So remember, we need 3 fully sized out water siphons. In other words, 3 water siphons with 5 harvesters each on them, total of 15 harvesters of water, to match up with 4 orchards of grapes, which each have a full 5 fields on them. So 3 water going to 4 grapes, and then those 4 grape farms or orchards need to send their goods to 10 wine distilleries, or whatever we're going to call them, wineries, wine factories. There, I'm continuing to have that scrolling problem. But again, I think that's just lag. So there's my machine gun approach to building roads, which I think I'm not sure what's causing that. So probably operator error. So here's our 3 water siphons. Not much to say, just we're building 3 of them. And we decided to do it up here for a couple things. One, we just gave ourselves the arbitrary, and there's my favorite mistake, putting one of the siphons so close that you can't get around the corner. But so we'll correct that. But we decided to give ourselves the arbitrary idea that the greatest grapes are grown up near Oasis, just so we would have them away from our brandy setup. So we would have to run some kind of a long-term line to show you how a spread out supply chain would work. And also because there's great water up here. You got all this. I think we have to assume those are lakes that are on the outer boundaries of these maps, because it seems to be fresh water. It wouldn't be the ocean, because unless these are desalinization plants that we're building here. So the lake up there we're connecting to, lots of shoreline, so it's great for building out our water siphons. Now we're going to start putting in our orchards to grow the grapes. And orchards seem to work best if you skip over 4 and let the field run along like this in direct parallel to the orchard itself, and that way you can get a nice little set of 5, a nice clean set like this. And when I do this kind of thing, I'm thinking Anno 1404. I don't know how many of you have played that game, but it's very much like this. In fact, one of the whole things with Anno 1404 was to come up with these patterns that would efficiently lay out these fields for you. In fact, there were whole sites with all these patterns you could use to lay them out. This one isn't quite that complicated. There aren't that many products that need that kind of love, but it is nice to have a good clean pattern like that where you get a nice tight fit and you can put them in a compact space. And so for orchards, it works best like that. The fields are kind of vertically oriented like that because that way it fits across the back of the orchard properly, and you get that nice 6x3 kind of thing with your farmhouse being one of the 6 and the other 5 being your fields. So we'll set up 4 of these, and we're going to put roads, kind of a square roads around everything, so that we can make sure that our water can get to where it needs to get, and that each of the farms can then take its goods to where they need to go. All these roads probably weren't totally necessary, but it kind of looks cool too to have them all out there. And we'll just keep doing this process. And I'm just going to show you the one and show you it build up, and then we're going to fast forward because this goes on for a long time. It takes, now, I mean, we've got to build 66 wine distilleries or factories, and so that means that the set we're building here with the 3 siphons, the 4 orchards, and the 10 distilleries has to be duplicated 5 more times after we get the first one done. Plus, we need a little extra on top of that to get from 60 to 66. So this goes on for a long time, and there's no real point in having you watch all of them. But we'll definitely show one completely all the way through so you can see it, and we'll talk about how we do the train setup to make it all work. So there, we're off to a great start. We've got our water siphons, we've got our farms, and now we're going to set up the destination. So we're going to have each of the orchards, and this is I went through and changed the names on a lot of these just so I wouldn't get confused. Make sure that I was pointing to the same one, and the naming could be another potential improvement, I think, but it's not a big deal. But I built the name just so I could easily say, okay, I want you to go to all 4 of those farms. I want you to have a destination. Well, I'm sorry. The way I did it, forgive me, the way I ended up doing it here, and I really, if I was going to do this again, I would go back and research and get those water siphons a little more, an extra 3 destinations so they could go to all 4. But what I did was I set the first one to go to orchard 1, orchard 2, orchard 3. The next one went to orchard 4, then 1, then 2, and the third one went to 3, then 4, and then back to 1. So 1 got a little double attention. It would have been better had I just done some research and expanded the destination count on the water siphons, and then it would have sent each one of those to all 4. That way you have an even distribution of your water across the 4. So room for improvement on my part there. So now we've got water going to all the orchards. And the orchards, of course, are useless unless they send the grapes to our wineries. And let's just call them wineries, even if they're not exactly a winery. Actually, a winery, to me, would be the combination of a farm and a building to make basically that farm would be a winery. But anyway, to keep consistent with the model they've chosen, we've got these little factories, and they're cool. So now we're going to put down 10 of these, and I used a combination of, sometimes I ran straight to the wineries, and sometimes I used warehouses in the sets and went that route. Either way works, but you just basically have to set it up so that your 4 orchards can feed your 10 distilleries, wine factories, so that you can get the grapes to the place they're needed. Now here I started to put down a train terminal, and it was going to set up deliveries out of this one little pod, if you will, and thought better of it and realized that because of the size of them, it would be easy for one train terminal to serve 2 of these pods. So in other words, 20 of the wineries, not just 10. And this big delay here is really me thinking this over and thinking, nah, we don't need to do that. By the way, there's another little thing. When you do the delete key, your track stays behind, so you have to delete it separately. It would be good if it went away with the train terminal, but not the world's biggest deal. Okay, so what I decided to do, rather than go ahead and put that train terminal in there, what I'm going to do now is set it up so that we've got the 10 here. You notice I haven't built all 10 of the wineries yet, and that's because I was thinking I would put that train station in the middle of them. But now I'm going to go ahead and build out another pod, another full set of 3 siphons, 4 farms, 10 wineries, and then let a train terminal serve those 20 wineries, not just 10. So let's fast forward through this piece and until this next pod has been developed. So now we have 2 full pods, and we're going to give them a train station. And we'll put that in the center, so it'll be easy for all of the wineries to deliver to the train station. So you can see the obvious pattern here is 3 siphons are going to feed 4 farms. 4 farms are going to feed 10 wineries. 10 wineries are going to take their output and send the wine to the train station. The train station will then deliver it down to our brandy setup down there near Kaywood, so that the brandy factories can get the wine and use it to make brandy. So here's our train station going in, and we'll set up our deliveries so that all those 20 wineries can take their output to that train station and load it up, and then it will set up a route, and of course it'll, as I said, deliver to our brandy setup. So now we've got a nice setup here of 20 of our 66. But now keep in mind, we need, like I said, 66. So we've got to do this whole thing you're looking at 2 more times, plus a few extras, in order to get all the wine, all the grapes, all the water we need to support those 14 brandy industries down there near Kaywood. So let's move forward a little bit more till this is becoming a little more mature. Now here you can see all those grapes, all that water, all those wine. We've got 66 wineries being served by all those grape fields and all that water. We've got 3 train stations set up to deliver into this one train station down here in our Brandy setup. And we'll talk more about that one train station and its responsibilities later. But the train routes are set up to run down into that station, and it'll unload into the warehouse. Now, keep in mind, we set up all that glass and bottle, but we didn't expand our setup for our coal and sand. So we're going back. I'm going back and kind of loading the planning tool with the Brandy setup so that I can get the numbers and get the numbers for coal and for sand. And make sure I have the right number of Brandy setups. There we go. That's more like it. So now we see we need 7 coal and 21 sand. And we've got 4 down here. We'd love to have it all come in from right here close by. So we're going to put in another coal mine where we can add 3 coal harvesters. And I've said this before, one thing I have not worked out yet is a really good pattern or way to set up these coal mines, iron mines, what have you, to harvest, to get the most number of harvesters around a coal deposit. And I can see where that's going to be a problem. You really want to be efficient with this if you have a map where you have limited resources, particularly coal and iron. You only get so many. And if you're going to do, like we're not even doing anything with steel yet, we're going to have to if we want to get the cars. And so we got to make sure that we have enough coal and iron on this map to service. And one of the ways you can help with that, of course, is to have a really good, efficient layout of how you do these coal mines so that your coal mines, you can get as many harvesters around that one deposit as possible and get the most out of it. So more on that to come. But now we're setting up the coal, so we'll have enough coal going to the warehouse. And we're going to have to expand our sand as well. But what I decided to do here to keep those coal mines working efficiently, I decided to go ahead and have them set up their destination as that new truck depot we just put down. So that truck depot will have its destination set up to be the warehouse. So the truck depot can constantly be taking coal to the warehouse, and the coal mines just have the short trip to unload the coal at that truck depot. And that way the coal mine, we won't have a problem with the coal mine waiting for its truck to get back before it can bring out another load. It can constantly be moving the loads into the truck depot. And we're going to do the same thing down here. This is going to be our sand collection area. We need 21 sand collectors. That's a lot. So we're going to set them up and put them into that truck depot right there and let that truck depot have the responsibility of taking the sand to our bottle and glass setup. So let's fast forward again. This is just going to be setting up the sand collectors that we need. So you saw there I had to do some correcting of the line. That third line, the farthest one to the right, train line, as we're looking at it, had trouble making that one go, and I've just scratched my head 1,000 times and finally In fact, I'm not even sure it's working. No, it's still not working. I had to do a bunch of changes to the track just to get it all lined up so that everything would go. And here I've noticed a couple more industries that I left out there that I didn't mean to. Actually, you know, as when we cut out all those tier 2 products, you know, we don't need a copper mine anymore, at least not right now. We will later. We'll go back and revisit. But we're finally at a point where we can start letting this thing run, and you can see we've got it's starting to chug, and the water is starting to come to the fields. Our berry fields our grape fields, excuse me, are slowly becoming nice and green, and means they're getting water. And this will go on for a while until they start producing grapes and sending them to the wineries to get produced, to get some wine made. Then, of course, the wine will be sent off to the closest train station, and then the train stations, as they get loads, will start hopefully sending the wine over to our brandy setup. So we got to let this run for a while to kind of catch up. Now, a better player than me would certainly go out, build out his water, then build out his grapes, let the water go to the grapes, get the grapes going a little bit, then build the wineries, then build the train stations, then build the lines, and kind of do it like that so that you're not running the cost of all these idle wineries, for example. But we got the money, and I didn't have the patience to fool with that, so I just built out the whole system, one big fell swoop, and now we're just going to let it run. And it will take a while for it to totally get into an efficient mode, but you can see right now it's almost like lights coming on. The wineries are starting to light up green. That means they're getting grapes, and that this whole thing is starting to work. And you can see down here, I actually goofed up on one of my last one I built. I forgot to set up my destinations for the water. So now I've got to go in and correct that and make sure I can get the water to the orchards so that they can start producing. So I've got that last pod up there, the last set of 3 siphons, 4 farms, 10 wineries is useless until we get water going to those grape fields. And that's what we're doing right here, is cleaning that up and getting those destinations set so that our water is being sent where it's needed. And I'll repeat myself, I should have done the research so that I had 4 destinations on these land harvesters, not 3. That would have been a lot better and a lot more even distribution. In fact, I may go back and change that, do the research and change those destinations so that this runs even more smoothly. There we go. Now see, they were accumulating water and had no place to go. Now they're going to pump water into those fields quickly, or those farms, and that'll go out to the fields. And then this the last pod setup up there will start to work, and eventually it'll go on down to the wine, and then the wine will start working, and then we'll be looking good. And in fact, rather than go ahead and do all that painful distribution of those grapes to those wineries, I just said, I put in a warehouse and let the grapes go automatically to the warehouse, and let the wineries go and automatically grab what they need out of the warehouse. And then I set the water siphons back to manual, since I'd already made that setup. And now we're using a warehouse there, whereas the one right below it, the set of 3, 4, and 10, is not using a warehouse. The one right below it is using one. So I told you I used a combination of sometimes warehouses, sometimes others. And the one down there, kind of to the bottom right of our screen as we're looking at it right this minute, that's the one where I put in the extras. Remember, we needed 66. So you get 60 from the 6 sets of 10, and we needed 6 more, so that's the extra 6 right there. And here we see we've got trains coming. So we're starting to get our wine shipments now. And if we look at that train, sure enough, it's got 36 wine on it, headed down to our brandy setup. So we know that that's working. And that one's coming out of the middle train station. So our middle one's working. Our top one will be working, especially now that we've got that water situation fixed. Oh, and now I had to watch that for a second to see what I'm doing. I'm setting up now the actual delivery of the brandies. Now that we're going to start getting wine, it won't be too long till we start seeing brandy delivered. So now we're setting up the delivery to take the brandy from the brandy setup over to Iberia, and also we'll set up another one that goes over to Stroud. So what we do is set it up. The line runs. Once it gets 9 brandy, it'll run to Iberia. Then the Iberia station has a destination set so that when it gets wine in, when it gets brandy in, it takes the brandy to the liquor store. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side and set up a delivery line that takes, once you get 9 brandy, you take off, run over to Stroud, unload. Stroud train terminal will have a destination set of the liquor store in Stroud. Like that. There we go. So now we have our deliveries going to Stroud, and we have our deliveries going to Iberia, and we already set up deliveries by truck straight out of the factory into the Kaywood liquor store. So you can see our bottle and glass industry starting to look good, starting to turn green. We're starting, and here comes some more wine in, and we're starting to unload. That wine's going into the warehouse, which is also getting the bottles. And now our brandy factories, distilleries, should start turning green here soon, because we should be getting bottles and wine in there. And you can see our giant fields up there are looking more and more green as we go along. So let's wrap up this episode right here. We've set up our giant fields of grapes. We've got them going, our grapes of wine, I guess we could call them. We've got our wine set up. We've got our transport, we think, set up. There's still a problem with it. Got to deal with that third train station that thinks it's lost. And we've got our deliveries going out to Stroud and to Iberia. And we've got bottles coming in. So let's pick it up right here. You can see a little problem with this delivered to Iberia. We'll deal with that in the next episode, and then we'll start seeing brandy being made. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Rise of Industry video. Thank you.